Okay, this is chapter 5 in our study guide in PowerPoint. If you take a look at the title of the chapter, it is Changes on the Western Frontier. America Settles the West, the late 19th century. Take a look at your study guide, and the first question it is asking is, what was the culture of the Plains Indians? Section 1, Cultures Clash on the Prairie. If you take a look at the map here, these are the states that we are going to be discussing. So what you can do is go ahead and write that down for number 1. North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri. Write that down for number 1. And please, as always, if I'm going too fast, just pause and rewind. On the next slide here, the horse and the buffalo. The introduction of the horse by the Spanish in 1598 and later the guns meant natives were able to travel and hunt. So question number 2 on your study guide is, what effect did the guns and horses have on Native Americans? You can write down that meant that the natives were able to travel and hunt. Okay, and obviously the horse provides speed, mobility, and the buffalo provides for all of the basic needs of the Native Americans. Number 3 on your study guide is asking to describe the Native American life. What you can do is simply summarize this slide here. They lived in small extended families. Men were the hunters, women helped butcher and help prepare the food. The tribes were very spiritual and land was communal, which means that they all worked together and lived on the land together. Go ahead and summarize that for number 3. On this slide, the name of the slide is Settlers Push Westward. Take a look at your study guide, and question number 4 is asking you, what was the attractiveness to move out west? Read along with me on the slide. The white settlers who had pushed westward had a different idea about land ownership. So the first thing that the settlers were interested in was land ownership. Please write that down. In addition to number 4, concluding that the plains were unsettled and thousands advanced to claim land, I want you to write down gold was discovered, which made a rush for land. And all of that falls under question number 4. Now remember, when we were studying chapter 3, we found out that Andrew Jackson had moved the Indians out west from Georgia. Well, as you're going to see, when the white settlers started to move out west, the Indians became another question that the government had to deal with. If you take a look at this slide here, the government restricts natives. Those are the Native Americans I was just mentioning. As more and more settlers headed west, the U.S. government increasingly protected their interests. Railroad companies also influenced government decisions. Native Americans and the settlers clash. If you take a look at the map, this is Denver that we're looking at here. And right here is the Sandy Creek Massacre site. Question number 5 on your study guide is asking you to describe the Sandy Creek Massacre. 1834, the government set aside all of the Great Plains as Indian lands. A short 16 years later, the 1850s, the government shifts this policy, giving native lands much smaller giving natives much smaller lands. As you can expect, the conflict ensues. And in 1864, the massacre at Sandy Creek. The U.S. Army attacked, killing 150 Native women and children. So go ahead and summarize this for question number 5. Question number 6 is, what company impacted westward movement? Go back to the previous slide. Says it right here. Railroad companies influence government decisions. So for number 6, please write down railroad companies influenced government decisions. Question number 7 is asking, describe Custer's last stand. On this slide here, this is going to outline Custer. Other conflicts and battles. Conflicts continued, including the Fetterman Massacre and the Red River War. Custer's last stand occurred in early 1876 when Colonel Custer reached Little Bighorn. Led by Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull, the natives outflanked and crushed Custer's troops. Go ahead and summarize his last stand. On this map, it's showing you the different battles that took place with the different Indians. As I said, right here was the Sandy Creek Massacre. So take a look at the map. Question number 8 and 9 will be answered on this slide. It's asking you, first of all, what does assimilation mean? And then describe the Dawes Act. The Dawes Act of 1887 attempted to assimilate natives. Please write that statement down for number 9. You can include, the act called for the breakup of reservations and the introduction of Native Americans into American life. By 1932, 2/3 of all land committed to natives have been taken. Summarize that for number 9. Number 8 asks, what does assimilation mean? It means to introduce natives into American life. That is the definition of assimilation. Please write that down for number 8. As I said, if I go too fast, please pause. This map just shows you how much Indian land was left by 1894. On a previous slide, I mentioned that the buffalo was the main staple of food for Native Americans. On this slide, you can start seeing the destruction of the buffalo. The most significant blow to tribal life on the plains was the destruction of buffalo. Tourists and fur traders, they shot the animal for sport. At one point, there were 65 million buffalo roaming, but by 1890, there was less than 1,000 left, and that really hurt the basic necessities for the Native Americans. Question number 10 on your study guide is saying, describe the Battle of Wounded Knee. That is on this slide here. On December 29th, 1890, the 7th Cavalry, which is Custer's old regiment, rounded up 350 Sioux and took them to Wounded Knee, South Dakota. A shot was fired, and within minutes, the cavalry slaughtered 300 unarmed natives. This event brought the Indian Wars to a bitter end. Please summarize that for number 10. And this is just a quote from a Native American regarding Wounded Knee. I did not know then how much was ended. When I looked back from this high hill of my old age, I can still see the butchered women and children lying, heaped and scattered along the crooked gulch, as plain as when I saw them with their eyes still young. And I can see that something else died there in the bloody mud, and was buried in the blizzard. A people's dream died there. It was a beautiful dream. The nation's hoop is broken and scattered. There is no center any longer, and the sacred tree is dead. Cattle becomes big business. With all the opening lands in the West, we had plenty of territory. Read along with me. Ranching became increasingly profitable. Texas Rangers learned how to handle Texas Longhorns from Mexican Rangers. Other things that we got from this area are vocabulary words. And we got this all from the people out west. And if you take a look at the vocab words, I bet you any money you probably recognize a lot of them. Pause and take a minute and take a look at them if you want. This map here is showing you where the animals were roaming and what impact it had on the economy of Texas. Number question is 11 is asking, name two things that affected the demand for beef. Read along with me. After the Civil War, the demand for beef surged. Urbanization and the rise of railroads was instrumental in the increase of beef consumption. Please write that down for number 11. Urbanization and the rise of railroads. And as you see in the third bullet point, the Chicago Union Stockyards was a famous market. This is where they bought and sold cattle. And again, this map is just showing you the cattle train from Texas up to Kansas. And eventually it ends. Most of the ranching became big business, so the small farmers were pushed out. Overgrazing, bad weather, etc. were the downfall of the range. This ends section 1.